My name is Dileia Rowan, and on the day my sister got married, I stood at the edge of a ballroom I had designed from the ground up. I wore a dress that cost more than it should have, and I smiled politely at a staff member who was struggling to find my name.
Rowan, I said with quiet patience. Dileia Rowan. I'm the bride's sister.
He frowned at the tablet in his hand, scrolling again.
I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not listed as a guest. That wasn't a mistake.
It was intentional, a silent declaration that had been building for years. I turned around slowly, scanning the ornate corridor of the Hallbridge estate. My mother, Margot, stood just inside the reception hall, perfectly poised in her custom navy gown. Her eyes flicked to me with barely a change in expression.
Mom,
I called out, trying to stay composed.
They can't find my name. She approached with a measured calm, sparing only a fleeting glance at the staffer as if he were the problem.
Then she looked at me, coldly, without remorse. Did you really think you were invited? She said in a hushed voice.
You're not family, Diameter. You're the help. You've done your job. No outburst. No raised voices. Just that.
Something inside me didn't break, it simply let go.
Then I'll act like what I am, I replied softly. The unpaid help.
I turned and walked out. Past the towering marble pillars, the bar that offered cocktails on menus I had custom designed, and the photo wall where my initials shimmered in metallic gold. The summer air outside clung to my skin, thick and suffocating. My heels tapped lightly on the stone path as I made my way to the parking lot. Each step a dull throb, but also necessary. You don't get erased in one dramatic moment. It happens little by little, until the day they stop pretending you ever mattered. And in that moment, I stopped pretending, too. Growing up, I always understood that Sienna was the shining star of our family.
The firstborn. Louder. More radiant.
Every room lit up when she walked in, and my mother made sure of it. Margot's admiration wasn't quiet, it was a spotlight. And once it landed on Sienna, it never shifted.
I didn't resent her back then.
I just assumed that was the way families worked. Some people glowed, others stood in the shadows. My dad, Daniel Rowan, was the one person who truly saw me. A gentle high school art teacher with quiet hands and ink stains beneath his nails, he carried poetry in his coat pockets and pride in my every sketch. He framed my very first drawing and hung it beside his bookshelf. He died of a stroke while leading an art workshop when I was 13.
Sienna was 16.
And in the aftermath, the beam of attention that had once flickered my way vanished completely.
That year remains vivid.
Margot began styling Sienna for luncheons, spa days, and estate parties, introducing her proudly as her future business partner. I stayed home most weekends, filling sketchbooks with what I couldn't say out loud.
I didn't act out. I didn't scream. Instead, I studied. I worked.
I earned a scholarship to the Portland College of Design. Margot clapped politely at the news but had only one question. Is there any real money in that? After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a boutique branding firm in the city. I climbed my way up until I was leading full campaigns. I never expected applause. Still, I called home every Sunday. I flew back every Christmas. And each time, Margot smiled that brittle smile and redirected the conversation to Sienna, her job, her apartment, her hair. When I got promoted to creative lead at 30, my mother's response wasn't congratulations. She said, "Oh, did I tell you? Sienna's thinking of buying another condo in Scottsdale." When Sienna announced her engagement to Andrew Hallbridge, Margot transformed. She began practicing how she'd introduce herself at the ceremony. Mother of the bride.
Yes, those Hallbridges.
Guest lists became her royal scrolls.
And like a fool, I offered to help.
"You're good with the design stuff," Sienna said vaguely over brunch. "Maybe you can do the invites and menus and whatever."
Whatever. That's what my time and talent had always been. An afterthought. Still, I agreed.
Because a part of me believed that if I made something beautiful enough, thoughtful enough, they might finally see me. Not as the invisible one, but as a daughter and sister worth recognizing. I began with the invitations, classic serif fonts paired with hand-illustrated vines. Pale blush envelopes with custom-printed liners. Wax seals pressed with a crest I created just for the Hallbridge name. I even paid out of pocket for premium cardstock to ensure every piece was perfect.
Then it grew. Welcome signs. table numbers, seating charts, cocktail napkins, dessert bar signage, illustrated maps. One after another, they dropped new tasks into my lap. Could you just tweak this one thing? I'm not loving that font anymore. Mom says the silver makes it look cheap. So I revised. I redesigned. I pushed down the sting of being micromanaged and kept going. When the budget ran tight, Margot murmured over dinner, maybe you could just cover the rest as your gift. It's not like you're contributing to the registry. I nodded. Because that's what the forgotten daughter does. She gives, hoping someone finally turns around. There was a wedding website, naturally. Clean, elegant, modern, built entirely by me. One night, as I was updating RSVP links and adding travel info, I clicked the family section without thinking. There they were. Bride, Sienna Rowan. Mother of the bride, Margot Rowan. Father of the groom, Charles Halbridge. Mother of the groom, Nancy Halbridge. But me? I wasn't there. Not even a mention. I stared at the screen for a long while, the blinking cursor mocking me. Maybe it was just a mistake, I told myself. Easy fix. Later that night, I texted Sienna. Hey, I noticed I'm not listed on the family page. Want me to add myself in? An hour passed before she replied. Oops. Must have slipped through. You can if you want. Doesn't really matter. Everyone knows who you are. That was the first crack. I never got an invitation in the mail, but I wasn't worried. After all, I had handled every aspect of sending them out, coordinated the address lists, reviewed the guest tiers, even hand-delivered a few to high-profile attendees. I never questioned whether one had been reserved for me. It seemed like a given. That assumption began to shift once the RSVPs started coming in. Each day, Sienna would text me screenshots. Guess who's confirmed? Andrew's dad's law partner said yes. But oddly enough, no one ever asked for my RSVP. Just to make sure it wasn't a simple error, I brought it up during a casual call with Margot. I know it sounds silly, I said with a light laugh, but I never got my own invite. I was hoping to save one as a keepsake. A pause. Then Margot replied, Oh, well, Sienna probably assumed you didn't need one. You've been helping so much already. It was meant to reassure, but something about that explanation made my chest tighten. Later, when I gently brought it up to Sienna, she waved it off. You're technically family, she said. You don't need the formalities. Technically. As if I were a distant relative with a footnote beside my name. Still, I kept pushing forward. The wedding was set for late June. By early May, I was finalizing the seating chart, cross-checking names, correcting spellings, organizing groups by connection. When I reached table 11, the one designated for immediate family, I noticed it right away. My name was missing. Not just from that table, but from every single one. Not listed with the bridal party. Not among friends. Not even tucked into a corner with the out-of-towners. I scoured the spreadsheet again. My name was there, but with no table assignment. My hands turned cold. I messaged Sienna right away. Hey, just realized I'm not on the seating chart. Where should I be sitting? 2 hours later, she replied. Oh, I thought you'd be busy helping with setup and coordination. Didn't think you'd actually need a seat. I responded, trying to keep my tone level. I'm not the planner. You hired Vanessa for that. I've only been doing the design work. Right, she said. I'll figure something out. Maybe you can sit with my college friends. The next day, I bought a dress. A simple, emerald green gown, elegant, understated. It matched the wedding colors but didn't conflict with the bridesmaid's look. It cost more than I could justify, but I didn't want to stand out. I wanted to blend in. To belong, if not emotionally, then at least visually. I also chose a wedding gift. A vintage silver picture frame from the 1930s, etched with soft floral patterns. I had it professionally restored, engraved with Sienna and Andrew's names and their wedding date. I planned to include a photo of them later, assuming I received one. From the outside, I looked like any devoted sister preparing for her sibling's big day. But inside, I was walking a fragile line, balancing between optimism and quiet devastation. I kept telling myself it was all wedding stress. That I was imagining it.
that they couldn't possibly mean to leave me out. Not after everything I'd done. Not with my work stitched into every detail of the event. The morning of the ceremony arrived with the stillness of air before a thunderstorm. I woke up before the alarm, dressed with purpose, and packed my tote with essentials. Extra programs, a backup USB drive with signage files, superglue, floral pins, stain remover, aspirin. The toolkit of a professional. A kit I'd brought to dozens of weddings. Except this time, the bride was my sister. And I was working for free. I reached the Hallbridge Country Estate 3 hours before guests were due to arrive. The place was extravagant, arched stonework, floor-to-ceiling windows, lush gardens trimmed with surgeon-like precision. I parked near the far end of the lot as vendors unloaded flower arrangements from cargo trucks. The air was thick with lavender and humidity. Inside, I approached the front desk with a friendly smile. "Hi, I'm Dileia Rowan, bride's sister. I've been handling all the design elements. Just checking in before people arrive." The woman behind the clipboard blinked at me. Her name tag read, Vanessa, event manager. "Oh right," she said after a pause. "I thought you were working remotely. Sienna didn't say you'd be on site." I hesitated. "I'm not part of the coordination team. Just here to make sure everything's in place. Signage, menus, table numbers, welcome display." "Ah," she said, flipping through her notes. "Those are already set up, but feel free to review them." I gave her a polite nod and moved toward the ballroom. There it was, the welcome sign I hand-lettered, framed in eucalyptus branches. My custom napkins stacked in glass trays at the bar. The illustrated guest map I'd drawn, propped on an easel near the gift table. I should have felt proud. But instead, it felt like being stripped bare, like pieces of me were everywhere, and yet I wasn't really there at all. Upstairs, Sienna and her bridesmaids were getting ready. I climbed the marble steps and knocked gently on the suite door. The music was loud. Laughter spilled out. One of her college friends opened the door, eyes squinting to place me. "Oh, Dileia, right?" I nodded. "Just checking if Sienna needs anything." Before she could answer, Margot appeared behind her, pulling the door partway closed. "What are you doing up here?" she asked, her voice tight. "I thought I could help. Maybe see if Sienna needs anything." "Everything's under control," she said quickly. "She's with her bridal party. She doesn't need distractions right now." "Can I just say hello?" Margot's lips thinned. "She's very stressed. Maybe head downstairs, make sure the tables look right." I nodded, though the words stuck in my throat. As I turned away, I heard Sienna's voice rise faintly behind the door. "Is she gone? I don't want any drama today." The door clicked shut. I descended the stairs slowly, my feet heavier with every step. Back in the ballroom, I took in the scene. Everything was perfect. The folded linens, the gleaming gold menu holders, the dessert table signs, all executed exactly as I'd planned. And still, I didn't have a place there. I slipped quietly into the last row of white chairs arranged in the garden for the ceremony. No one asked why I wasn't seated with family. I watched as Sienna made her entrance on Margot's arm, glowing in designer lace. I saw Margot tear up, something she'd never done for any of my milestones. Not my art shows. Not my graduation. Not my promotion. Photos were taken on the terrace afterward. Sienna, Andrew, their parents, aunts, cousins, friends. Everyone was called in. Everyone posed and smiled. I waited by the hedges, hoping for a signal, an invitation to step in. It never came. As guests moved toward the reception hall, Vanessa and her assistants lined up by the entrance, iPads in hand. I stepped into the reception line, smoothing out my dress, rehearsing what I'd say in my head. "I'm Dileia, the bride's sister. This must be a mistake." When it was my turn, I offered my name. The staff member paused, tapping at the tablet. Then again. "HM. I'm not finding you, and your last name." "Rowan. That's Rowan, Dileia." "Just a second," he said quietly before stepping aside and speaking in hushed tones to Vanessa. She looked in my direction, then turned back to the screen in front of her. Moments later, she approached. "There seems to be a problem," she said, voice pleasant but strained. "Your name doesn't appear on the approved guest list." My heart skipped. That can't be right. I'm Sienna's sister. She leaned in, speaking more softly now. I understand. But we're only allowed to admit names confirmed by the bride or her mother. Right on cue, Margot appeared behind her. What's going on? They're saying I'm not on the list, I said, heart pounding. I'm your daughter. I designed everything here. Margot's expression didn't shift. Did you honestly think you were invited? She asked smoothly, her tone calm and unbothered. You're not family, Dileia. You're the decorator. You've done your job. I stood frozen for a breath, then nodded. Well, I said quietly, then I'll take my leave, unpaid naturally. And I turned around and walked away. No raised voice. No breakdown. Just the sound of my heels echoing against the polished floor, and the slow realization that every quiet dismissal I'd ever received had been leading to this moment. Outside, the parking lot was still mostly empty. Groups of guests were arriving, laughter bubbling as they stepped out of sleek cars, dressed in silk, linen, and pastel shoes. My shoes tapped steadily along the stone path. In the heavy hush of summer, every step sounded too loud. Halfway to my car, the weight of it all hit me. My legs gave out slightly, and my hands trembled. The emerald dress I'd so carefully chosen now felt like a costume, like I'd been playing a part in a story that never had a place for me. I spotted a bench near a small fountain and sat down. Legs crossed. Shoulders back. Trying to appear composed, even now, even in solitude. I didn't cry. I stared at the water, cascading over the stone in a steady rhythm, waiting for the numbness to fade. It didn't. So I did the only thing that made sense. I pulled out my phone and called the one person who never made me feel invisible. Kendra, I said, my voice catching. Can you come get me? She arrived 35 minutes later. No questions at first. Just a fierce hug that made my ribs ache. She opened the car door, helped me in, and handed me a bottle of water like it was medicine. They didn't let me in, I whispered. She nodded. I figured. The second I heard your voice, I knew it was something big. Back at her apartment, I curled up on her couch. The green dress lay folded beside me, discarded like a second skin. Kendra made tea and sat with me in silence. She didn't rush me. Later, when the quiet had stretched long enough to feel real, she looked at me and said, You need to talk to someone. I mean really talk. A therapist? I muttered. A lifeline, she said. This wasn't just about being left out of a wedding. This was your entire history finally yelling loud enough that you couldn't ignore it. She was right. The next week, I sat in a softly lit office across from Dr. Yvonne Ritter. Her walls were lined with abstract prints, warm-toned bookshelves, and soft shadows. She looked at me directly, with gentleness but no flinching. I told her everything, from the missing invitation to the door that was closed in my face. When I finished, she spoke gently. What you're describing isn't just favoritism. It's long-term emotional erasure. What happened at the wedding, that wasn't the beginning. That was the end point of a pattern you've been living under for years. Erasure. That word landed hard. I hadn't simply been overlooked. I had been deliberately made invisible. During one of our first sessions, Dr. Ritter gave me a task. Go through your old belongings, anything from childhood. Look at them with fresh eyes. See what you notice now. That night, I found a small shoebox labeled in my father's handwriting. Dr. R, age 11 3/4. Inside were birthday cards, wrinkled drawings, and one folded letter on lined paper. It was from him. He had written it the day I won a statewide poster contest in 6th grade, a win no one had ever mentioned again after his funeral. Dileia, he wrote, I hope you never stop drawing from your heart. That kind of honesty is rare. You don't need a crowd to be valuable. You already are. I read it 5 times. Then I held it to my chest, and for the first time since that day at the estate, I let myself cry. 3 weeks after the wedding, I officially registered my design studio, Dileia Rowan Design. No announcements. No Instagram reveals. Just quiet ownership of what had always been mine. Then, one afternoon, an email arrived from an editor at a bridal magazine. She had seen photos from the Hallbridge wedding and wanted to feature the designer behind the look. My name hadn't made the guest list, but it would now appear in print, in 14-point serif, as the creative behind the style everyone had admired. Days later, a bride reached out. "I saw what you created," she wrote. "It felt intentional." She hired me for her vineyard wedding, full pay, no haggling, no strings. When the contract arrived, I noticed the venue, Hallbridge Country Estate. I signed without hesitation. They hadn't wanted me there as a sister, but I would return as someone they couldn't overlook. Not to prove a point, but to do the work I love, under my own name, because I no longer needed their recognition. I had already found my place, and it was never in their ballroom.